There's a story that's been circulating for a few days now about Canterbury Cathedral. And this comes in the backdrop of the fact that for the first time in 1,428 years, done my homework, um, the church is led by a woman, Sarah Mullally, former Bishop of London. Um, there was a development recently. The Nigerian church has formally broken away from the Anglican Communion in protest, not just at her being a woman, but the church's positions on gay rights. I think many people observing the Church of England in recent years would say it's definitely moved to the left. Um, Certainly Rowan Williams, arguably Justin Welby, and Sarah Mullally are all left wingers. So it's a little bit actually like the Holy See, though not as arguably more so. The Vatican has moved to the centre left. Pope Francis was definitely on the left in papal terms. Pope Leo maybe not as much, but still on the moderate left. So the church in general is moving in that direction, at least the central churches in Canterbury and Rome. So that's something to observe. Now, Canterbury, as the mother church of the Church of England, has put out this diversity scheme recently, and it's quite polarizing. I'm just going to read the report out and share my thoughts. The report is by Aine Fox. It's A-I-N-E Fox in The Independent. Canterbury Cathedral curator delighted as J.D. Vance slams graffiti exhibition. The curator of a new art exhibition at Canterbury Cathedral has defended the display ahead of its official opening after it was controversially branded ugly by US Vice President J.D. Vance. From Friday, visitors can view the graffiti-style installations adorning the walls of the centuries-old landmark. The 3-month Hear Us exhibition is described as a thought-provoking exhibition delving into the concept of raising a question to God in our contemporary society, specifically focusing on representing voices from marginalised communities. Despite its intended message, the artworks have drawn criticism from both Mr. Vance and tech billionaire Elon Musk, while the Dean of Canterbury, David Monteith, acknowledged people would either love it or hate it. Writing on social media platform X earlier this week, Mr. Vance said, "It is weird to me that these people don't see the irony of honouring marginalised communities by making a beautiful historic building really ugly." Mr. Musk replied, "Absolutely." Speaking ahead of the public opening, curator Jacqueline Creswell said she had been delighted two really important figures in the world had taken time to comment. She told the PA news agency, "Well, I have to say that J.D. Vance and Elon Musk are really important figures in the world today, and they must be incredibly busy, so I guess I was delighted at the fact that they'd actually taken time to research the exhibition before it opens tomorrow." Just a bit of sarcasm there. She said she believed much of the noise around the exhibition had now dissipated and people were having more positive engagements with the artworks. She said, "I have to say that now that the noise has dissipated, I'm finding that the press and people in particular are really beginning to engage with the real story behind the exhibition, and I'm finding so many people far more positive about it now that they're better informed. The project involved asking people from marginalised communities, including people from ethnic minority backgrounds, neurodivergent and LGBTQ plus A, and I'm not making that up, that's what it says, what would you ask God? The results in brightly coloured graffiti include where does love come from and where is humanity heading? The cathedral website states that the questions have been expertly and sensitively fixed to the ancient stone pillars, walls and floors of the cathedral and will remain there until the exhibition closes on January the 18th. The installation is aimed at combining modern art with ancient architecture and builds on a history of graffiti on the building, said to be shown by the already present Mason's mark, crystograms and mark left by pilgrims and other visitors across the centuries. Artist Alex Viles said the project was about community and they were proud to have played a part. They said language is the people who speak it and graffiti is the language of the unheard. By graffitiing the inside of Canterbury Cathedral, we join a chorus of the forgotten, the lost and the wondrous. People who wanted to make the mark to say I was here and to have their etchings carry their voice through the centuries. Mr. Monty has said public opinion has been split on the installation, but encourage people to see it for themselves. He said people will love it or hear or hate or hear us installation, no question. But rather than react just on the basis of a few online comments, I would encourage people to come and experience the artwork for themselves and to make up their own minds. Rather than be distracted by the aesthetics of the graffiti lettering, I hope that people will still want to think deeply about the questions posed within the artworks and experience the sense of meaningful encounter that we want to want all who come to the cathedral to have. Right, so I have to say I'm critical, and I'll tell you why. Are they really, really trying to get people to think? Are they really, really trying to get people to ask questions? Or are they simply just pitching to the left, just pitching to woke ideology? I mean, if they really want to invite debate, if they really want to invite questions, is it really the best way to go about it by just being provocative for provocative sake? Now, I'm aware that this isn't permanent. I'm aware that it's some sort of stickers, so apparently it won't do any damage to the buildings. They better be damn sure of that, because it would be criminal if they have damaged an ancient building for the sake of woke gesture politics. But this taps into what I was saying at the start of the video. The Church of England has absolutely been moving to the left in recent years. Now, my own church is diverse. We have a woman rector. We have people from all sorts of communities. There are migrants. There are Iranians. There are Nigerians. There's people from Hong Kong. It's a diverse communion, and I'm happy to say that. I think that is a good thing. I think that places of worship should be welcoming. So I've no problem with that principle. But I do question shock for shock's sake. This is kind of like some modern artists who just wants to stick some installation on the street and say, look, be shocked, ask questions. You know, they're admitting people should ignore, or not admitting, they're saying people should ignore the aesthetics of it. Well, as one critic pointed out, it looks like a car park in Peckham. I'm just not convinced this is the best way to represent diversity. There's another point about it. It's insinuating that by putting up urban graffiti, that's the only way you can represent minorities. It's kind of a little bit condescending to minorities, as if all minorities are engaged in going out and tagging. What's to say that minorities themselves will approve of this? There may well be black and Asian parishioners who think, oh, this looks appalling. So it's a little bit condescending to just insinuate this is the way. I mean, I'm not sure if the curator is white or what their ethnicity is, but I think it's a little bit condescending to assume that repressed minorities all must approve of this. I mean, frankly, you know, you're talking about representing the sort of people who would put up graffiti. Frankly, a lot of that is criminals, you know, gangs. Is that really what the church should be promoting? I just think you can go too far in terms of pandering to these sort of narratives. Aesthetically, I'm not convinced from the images I've seen. I don't think it looks good. Thank goodness it is temporary, because I mean, my thought is, you know, you get tourists coming from all over the world to Canterbury. It's the mother church of the Church of England. And their first thought's going to be, is this how the British treat their religious buildings? I mean, they should at the very least have some sort of disclaimer saying these stickers are not corrosive, they're not going to cause any damage to the foundations of the church. You know, I'm not convinced. And you know what, I think there's also a bit of gaslighting involved, because the left-wing creators of this will then jump in and say, our critics are just right-wingers, our critics must be against minority representation. What I'm arguing is it's a bit condescending to say that all minorities must be okay with graffiti. I mean, I can think of Nigerian parishioners in my church who would absolutely not approve of this and would think, wait a second, that doesn't represent me. So to me, it's just shock for shock's sake. The Church of England, I mean, they may be thinking we need to get more parishioners and this is the way to do it, and it may or may not work. I kind of think of the Sister Act films, very funny movies, and I think of that scene where Whoopi Goldberg kind of brings in the teenagers from the street because they hear the music being played. So I suppose that's the sort of mindset the curator has, but I'm not convinced, because trying to make the church relevant in the modern world is important, but what extent do you go with this? Are we going to get to a point where scripture is totally ignored, for example, in the pursuit of pleasing everyone? I think that would be a mistake. And I'm going to say something some might deem to be conservative, so be it. Is the church going to go down a line of saying, well, trans women are actually women, and, go down that line? Well, effectively they do at the moment. I think you could go too far. I do think you can go too far. Are they going to get to a point, for example, in England and Wales, gay marriage is legal, but as stands, there's a stipulation that clergy who do not agree with that in principle will not be forced to perform ceremonies. Is the church going to become so left-wing and woke that they're actually going to force clergy to do that? I would have a problem with that. I would think you're forcing someone to sell out on their conscience and what they interpret faith to be, just for the sake of being deemed to be progressive. I'm not convinced about that. So, I may visit Canterbury Cathedral and think, okay, well, it's not as bad as I anticipated, but based on the photographs, I agree. It looks like a car park in Peckham, and I think it's shock for shock's sake. It's all very well saying we want to encourage conversation and debate. Well, what about the other side? Don't the other side get a say? What about people who are critical of this? Where's their voice? I suppose the curators would say, oh, we're letting them have their critique. But it just, to me, I think the church, frankly, is going a little bit too left-wing. Not the Vatican, I think, in the case of the Holy See. I mean, everything is contextual. And left-wing in Vatican terms would be pretty centre ground to the rest of the world. But the Church of England, there's no mystery about it. It's definitely moved well to the left in recent years. And I'm not totally against that. I would not want the Church of England to be ultra-conservative. I wouldn't want it to be hellfire and damnation. That would just polarize people. And I would say this: if you're Nigerian and you're getting your pitchfork out because of acceptance of gay people in the Church of England, you need to get your priorities right. Nigeria is a country where Christians are being persecuted, where there's rampant corruption, where there's serious threats from climate change, like severe flooding. 600 people died this year from flooding. So if you're Nigerian and you're up in arms about gay people being welcomed into the church, you really need to get your priorities right, I would say. So I just think I'm not convinced. And I think it's kind of manipulative because they know damn well anyone who criticizes it, they'll just say, oh, they're reactionary right-wingers. Some of us just happen to think an ancient building shouldn't have modern graffiti plastered all over it, even if it is just a sticker. I mean, it would be like putting that on Stonehenge. I just fundamentally think it's questionable. The final thing I'll say is Musk and Vance should stick their nose out of it. Once again, they're weighing into this, and it's none of their business. We're not talking here about an American cathedral. This is in the Church of England. So it's really none of their business. But again, I'm not comfortable being in the same camp as Musk and Vance, but I'm also critical of it. I just think it's shock for shock's sake. And it's just typical, it's a typical woke tactic. Let's do this thing, shock people, and then anyone who criticises us will portray them as not being progressive. I just think there's other ways to represent diversity. And I think it's condescending to suggest that the only way you can represent diversity is by this garish graffiti. No, I'm not convinced by it. But who knows? I could visit Canterbury and totally change my mind. I just would say, from what I've seen, I'm just not convinced by it.